There's a verse the Bible quotes more than any other. It isn't John 3:16. It isn't Psalm 23. It was spoken on a mountain, inside a crack in the rock, by God himself, about himself. The prophets quoted it. The psalmist sang it. Jonah threw it back at God like an accusation. It echoes from Numbers to Nahum, the Bible's own favorite verse. And here's the strangest part. God spoke it just days after the worst betrayal in Israel's history. Why then? And what did he actually say? To understand it, you have to see where Israel is standing. Weeks earlier, this whole nation heard God speak from Sinai. Thunder, fire, a voice out of the darkness that made them beg for it to stop. They swore an oath. All that the Lord has spoken, we will do. 40 days later, they were dancing around a golden calf. The covenant tablets lay shattered at the foot of the mountain. 3,000 were dead. And now God says something that frightens Moses more than the fire ever did. I will not go up among you, lest I consume you on the way. Think about what that offer means. God will still give them the land, still send an angel ahead, still keep every promise. He just won't come himself. Religion with no presence. A promised land with no God in it. And when the people hear it, they mourn. They strip off their ornaments like people at a funeral. So Moses does what Moses does. He walks to the tent of meeting. The pillar of cloud comes down. And the Lord speaks to him face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. Not that Moses could actually see him. We're about to find out he couldn't. But the language is friendship, closeness. And Moses starts to plead. Not for the land, not for safety, for God. If your presence will not go with me, do not bring us up from here. Better the wilderness with you than paradise without you. And God says, yes, this very thing that you have spoken, I will do. And then Moses, standing in more grace than any man alive, asks for more. 5 words no one had ever dared to say. Please show me your glory. Not your works, not your wonders, you. Everything so far has come filtered. Cloud, fire, voice. Moses wants the unfiltered reality of God. And God's answer is one of the most sobering sentences in the Bible. You cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live. Notice, not I refuse. You couldn't survive it. The unshielded glory of God would undo a sinful man the way the sun undoes a moth. That's the wall every human being stands behind. But here's where it gets strange. Moses asked to see God's glory, and listen to what God offers instead. I will make all my goodness pass before you, and will proclaim before you my name. Moses asked for glory. God promised goodness. As if when God turns to show a human being the deepest thing about himself, what comes out isn't raw power. It's character. So God gives instructions. There is a place by me where you shall stand on the rock. Cut 2 new tablets. Climb up alone at dawn. While my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Sit with that image for a second. The only way a man survives the nearness of God is if God himself hides him, inside the rock, under his own hand. The danger is God, and the shelter is God. Hold on to that. It's the whole Bible in one picture, and we're coming back to it. Morning. Moses climbs alone. The cloud descends. And then the Lord passes before him and proclaims. This is it. The verse everything else quotes. The Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty. When God introduces himself, no prophet's paraphrase, his own voice speaking his own name, he leads with mercy, merciful, gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with covenant love. Days after the golden calf, the worst betrayal his people had yet committed, the first word out of the cloud is not a demand, it's mercy. And notice the order of events. Grace comes first. The law gets recarved on those tablets after this proclamation, not before, which corrects something most of us quietly believe. We assume God's default setting is disappointment, and mercy is the exception he occasionally makes. Sinai says the opposite. Mercy is the lead. Anger is the thing he is slow to. And the rest of Scripture can't stop repeating it. Numbers, Nehemiah, Psalm 86, Psalm 103, Psalm 145, Joel. David sang it over his own scandal. And Jonah? Jonah is almost funny. When God spares Nineveh, Jonah spits this verse back at him like a lawyer's complaint. I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. I knew you'd do this. It's just like you. Even God's angriest prophet knew Exodus 34 by heart. But if you were listening closely on that mountain, you heard the problem. Forgiving iniquity, yet by no means clearing the guilty. Read those two lines side by side and they nearly break each other. How can God forgive sin and refuse to clear the guilty at the same time? If he forgives, hasn't he cleared them? If he never clears the guilty, who exactly gets forgiven? The verse the Bible quotes most has a fault line running straight through its center. And here's the astonishing thing. The Old Testament never resolves it. For roughly 14 centuries, that tension just hangs there. Until a man from Nazareth. John opens his gospel with Sinai deliberately in view. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, literally tabernacled among us. And we have seen his glory, full of grace and truth. Grace and truth. To Hebrew ears, that's the old pair from the mountain, steadfast love and faithfulness. John is quoting the cleft of the rock. He's saying the glory Moses begged to see and couldn't survive now has a face, and it's the face of Jesus. A few lines later, John says it outright. No one has ever seen God. There's Exodus. The only God who is at the Father's side, he has made him known. And that fault line in the verse, watch where it resolves. At the cross, God does both halves of his own name at once. He does not clear the guilty. Every sin is paid for, in full, in the body of his Son. And he forgives iniquity, transgression, and sin. Because the payment is real, the pardon is free. Paul says it exactly, so that God would be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. Justice and mercy don't take turns at Calvary. They meet in the same wounds. And now that picture from the mountain comes all the way home. The danger is God, and the shelter is God. The judgment we cannot survive, and the rock we're hidden in are the same person. The old hymn saw it plainly. Rock of ages, cleft for me. One more scene, and it might be the best kept secret in this whole story. Jesus climbs a mountain and is transfigured, his face shining like the sun. And Luke tells us 2 men appear in glory talking with him. One of them is Moses. Do you see it? The man who was told, "You cannot see my face and live," is standing on a mountain, looking into the blazing face of God and living. God never refused Moses' request. He scheduled it. So here's what this means when you walk down from this mountain. Somewhere in you, there's a voice that says God is mostly done with you. That after the last failure, the one you don't talk about, he keeps you at arm's length. You'd never say it out loud, but you live like it. You pray like a defendant, not like a child. Friend, that God is one you've imagined, a calf of a different kind. Because when the real God described himself, with his people's worst day fully in view, he led with mercy. So this week, when the accusation comes, don't answer it in your own words. Answer it in his. Merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love for thousands. You're allowed to hold God to his own self-description. Jonah did. David did. Moses came down that mountain with his face glowing, carrying light he didn't even know he was wearing. And remember, he'd only seen the back, the afterglow, the trailing edge of the glory. Just the echo on a borrowed face was enough to make a nation afraid to look. Which leaves one question hanging over every one of us. If the back of his glory did that, what will the face be like? Moses found out. So will you.